Joining me now is Batya Ungar-Sargon, journalist and author of the fantastic book Second Class: How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Men and Women. Batya, thanks for joining me here on the U.S. Report. Want to talk about Harvard, or should I say Harvard University, which is now preparing to fight back against Donald Trump's efforts to make them basically de-wokeify themselves. Here's President Alan Garber speaking with NBC, doubling down on his defiance against Trump. Have a look.
Is this bigger than Harvard at this point?
Of course it's bigger than Harvard, because we look at what's at risk here. And what's at risk is the excellence of higher education in the United States, and in particular, the research mission of many of our universities, which play such a vital role in the U.S. economy and in the health and well-being of the American people.
Now, Batya, I need you to help explain this to me, because in the 20th century, the federal government deployed troops to end discrimination against black people at schools. And it seems to me like just threatening to hold back funds to schools like Harvard, which has a $53 billion endowment, to make them follow the rules when it comes to the Civil Rights Act and not allowing anti-Semitism and not violating the Supreme Court's ruling on not using affirmative action to discriminate on the basis of race again. Well, it seems like they're getting off easy.
It's so amazing, James. My response to this is fight, fight, fight. Keep fighting, Harvard. You got this, because everything they do just reveals more and more clearly to the American people how morally corrupt they have become on so many fronts. So President Trump effectively said to Harvard, you can have your $2 billion back. We know you have a $53 billion endowment, but we'll give you back the $2 billion. All you have to do is a bunch of extremely reasonable things, like promise to stop importing people who hate America and hate the Jews, submit all of your professors to a plagiarism test, uphold the Civil Rights Act, which your funding depends on, to which Harvard simply said, no way, Jose, we will not do any of those things. And they effectively are making the case that Trump is making for him. They are saying that we would rather euthanize our own puppies, which is what they threatened to do, then stop importing people who hate America and hate the Jews, then stop employing plagiarists, then stop allowing the harassment of Jewish students. So I love this story. I hope they keep fighting. I would love to see the discovery here. I would love to see who's been funding Harvard all of this time. And of course, the real outrage here is not just the taxpayer dollars going to this unbelievably elitist institution, but it's the fact that the hardworking Americans of this country who don't go to Harvard and don't go to college can no longer achieve the American dream, whereas the America-hating, Jew-hating graduates of Harvard will all be rich. And I think that's the real outrage here that President Trump has really exposed. He's waging class warfare on behalf of the working class.
Well, and isn't it just remarkable, too, because Harvard has this $53 billion endowment. They have a tax-exempt status, which basically allows them, to do all sorts of things with this endowment, including have half of this invested apparently in private equity, while also relying on billions of dollars in taxpayer funds. To me, Batya, it seems like Harvard and the Ivy League is kind of like an educational subprime crisis waiting to happen.
Absolutely. That's a really, really good point and really well put. And people in defense of Harvard keep pointing out how many patents they have pending. Patents? You mean that after we gave them $2 billion of taxpayer money, they are then going to make private bank off of those discoveries that we paid for? Like the privatization of the profit while the public foots the bill is so utterly disgusting. But that really is at the heart, as you point out, James, of this entire scam. And I think it's really being exposed right now.
Now, Batya, there's been another executive order signed this week, which I think has huge impact here on the doctrine of disparate impact, which is basically saying that no longer should employers and others be taking into account this idea of disparate impact, whereby if a policy that is not racially motivated or gender biased motivated still has an impact where at the end of the day, there's a different result for different races or different groups, that's not necessarily proof of racism or sexism. This disparate impact idea has been used, of course, to justify so much corporate wokeness in the past and government wokeness. Tell me about this and the impact that taking this doctrine away from all the critical race theorists and everybody else is going to have.
Right. So, Dr. King's vision was, of course, that we would achieve equality before the law, that we would learn to judge each other by the content of our character and not the color of our skin. What the wokes did was they took that ideal of equality that we all aspire to, and they changed it into equity. Not equality before the law, but equality of outcomes, which of course is impossible to achieve in a meritocracy, in a merit-based system. And the reason that they did that was you have to look at who loves this stuff. You talk to Blacks and Hispanics, especially younger people, and they are so sick of hearing about racism here and racism there. They know that it's baloney, let's say. They know that it does not comport with the experiences that they have. The people who love this equity stuff and the obsession with racism are rich, white progressives. And the reason they love it is because if they call the whole country racist and they act like all of the sins of our past are still upon us, nobody's going to notice that they got rich, and they can keep lording it over the working class ad infinitum.
And this brings me to something else I want to discuss with you real quick here, too, which is the status of the whole fight over immigration. And Donald Trump has succeeded, I think, pretty much we can say, in securing that southern border, A+ there. But now the left is going to bat for people like accused MS-13 members. And I find this extraordinary because I'd love your thoughts on this. I spoke earlier about how what they're trying to do is erase the distinction between citizen and non-citizen for the idea of letting anybody into the country, anybody stay, anybody eventually vote to get power forever. Am I on the right track here? Is this really where the left is going with these policies?
I don't think it's about voting so much as I think it is about a workforce. They are the employers of low-wage laborers. And so they have literally lined their pockets with the proceeds of their open border policy. It is so amazing, James. I mean, I never thought I would see the day where you have Democratic lawmakers standing there and like teary-eyed effectively saying, "Je suis MS-13, je suis Garcia," you know what I mean? Like the weeping over these gangbangers. Donald Trump is trying to restore the middle class, and the Democrats are trying to restore the ranks of MS-13 in this country. And it is really astonishing. But I do think it is more about wages and the economy and the upward mobility that they cut off for working class people by having millions and millions and millions of people to employ rather than about votes.
I think, Batya, you're on to something there. We've spoken about this before, and we will speak about it again. Batya Ungar-Sargon, thanks so much for joining me on the U.S. Report.